Good morning, everybody. It's so wonderful to see all of you. It's so wonderful to be here this morning together on this gorgeous San Francisco day. When the rest of the world is facing high heat, it's lovely to be in our microclimate of the Bay Area and to be together. I want to thank everybody who's joining us here and via Livestream. Hello to the folks from wherever you're joining us outside of this sanctuary and everyone who made it here this morning. I want to say with gratitude those who are helping make this morning possible. Mari Magaloni Ramos, who is here, worship associate this morning, to our Desired Effect folks who are here, who have been here every week while Jonathan Silk was away on vacation. Thank you so much for holding us steady in this time. And Eric Shackelford on camera, and Joe is on our chat for those who are remote and might need some support, and Kelvin, who helped get the building ready, and Reiko Odelaine, who opened with our gorgeous preludes this morning, and Mark Sommer, who is back, to Laurel Sprague, who's our soloist, and Richard Fay, who will be leading us in song. And to all of you, we make this hour together. I do want to mention that we don't have official permission yet that I'm aware of, but I would ask you all to hold in your hearts Leland Jones, who is a member of the staff here, as he has been for over 20 years, who is in the hospital right now, and just please keep him in your prayers. I'm going to go see him this afternoon. We've had Fred Rabideau has visited him over the last couple days, so we've had some updates, and I'm sure as soon as I get his official permission, we'll share more. But just please keep him in your thoughts and prayers. I wanted to open today's service with an unusual use of the gong, but I forgot to tell our sound people this. So there is a mic here. Is it on? Good. We use this gong often, I have, over the last few years as a way to recognize losses and things we're holding that are hard. But I wanted to invite us this morning, in this Sunday when we're looking at the ordinary, to open ourselves to the power of sound. And as I strike the gong, invite you to lean into a presence to its ringing and its dissipation back into silence as we invite ourselves to be grounded in this hour together and its purposes. I light our blue candle, calling into this space the presence in spirit of all those, not only those here, but those joining us from distance, those present and those of our past. And I invite us to begin our worship singing our first hymn of the morning. It is hymn number 90, From All the Fret and Fever of the Day. You may rise as you're able. I will just say that all those speaking this morning have been tested and are COVID negative. I thank you all for wearing your masks. If you can all just remember to keep them above your nose so they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, that would be great. And if your mask breaks, we have some by the welcome desk. Thank you.
Please join me in our chalice lighting. The words are in your order of service. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. We light this symbol of our faith as we gather together. I'm Worship Associate Mari Magaloni Ramos, and it is wonderful to be with you this morning. And with Vanessa, welcome back, Reverend Vanessa. Yay. If this is your first time with us, or in person, or in video, bienvenidos, welcome. You can follow along in the order of service, which is also available in the description of this video. And it's also emailed to everyone who receives our newsletter, which you can get by signing up through a link to our connection form that is in the order of service. The order of service also lists upcoming events and links to opportunities to connect, including our Zoom coffee hour, which takes place after the service. And we hope to see you there. Please join in anything that interests you. I'd like to call attention to the following opportunities. Sunday school registration is open. And also, I'd like to invite you to the Good Trouble table, which will be open after the service in the courtyard to write more letters. And we have Richard Davis today, who has an announcement, I think. There you are. Come on down. Hi, Richard.
I suspect all of you have heard, or at least heard the rumor, that after quite a break, the auction is returning. Yeah, and yay, me too. Yeah, the last time we did it, you may remember, it was the Mad Hatter's Tea Party was the theme. And it was supposed to be crazy, and it was. But it stayed that way for 3 years. So now we're getting back to something approaching, we hope, normal. And so the next auction is coming up in October, and we're just at the beginnings of planning it. But we have a theme. Fortunately, not craziness again. This one is homecoming. And that has the theme of all of us finally, hopefully, at least most of us, coming back and being together again, really being together, being here in community with one another. Yeah. But homecoming also has another image, at least for me. It's like penance, yeah, and banners, but we're not going to have them. We're not going to. We canceled the marching band. I know, I'm missing it too. And the homecoming ball, that also got knocked out. The King and Queen came up as an idea. We've been beating that around, but they're now black and blue and decided to retire. So it's going to be a little less nutsy than the last time, but still equally fun, we hope. And what we would like to do today, and part of it, besides just announcing it's coming, is for anybody who's interested in getting involved in this, you want to contribute your high school yearbook or a picture of yourself when you were a high school senior or whatever you want to do. We also have a meeting today, which is, I think, really only our second, where we're beginning to organize. So anybody who has even the slightest interest in homecomings, maybe you have some experience this from a while back, that we're meeting today, 12:30, right after service, in the Stebbins room. And we would love to see you come in and contribute to this. So I'm glad to be here. At my age, I'm glad to be anywhere. But so please, if you're interested at all, please come to the Stebbins today and help us. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Woo! Yeah, we need reasons to celebrate, so I'm looking forward to this one. We're going to take a moment to greet folks, and since we don't know people's comfort level with everything going on in the world, if you can just namaste unless you know the person or are invited in for a hug, but otherwise, let's greet one another and say hello before we continue with worship. You stay. I'll invite everyone back to your seats.
Please join me as we say together our covenant and sing our doxology. The words are printed in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
By
Among the books I've been meandering with this summer is Sarah Wilson's book, First We Make the Beast Beautiful. And in it, she shares an observation and an invitation to meditation, to reflection, that I'd like to invite you to be part of this morning. So I invite us to sit for a moment in quiet, and then I'll invite us into her words. There is a bit in Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now that I've always loved. It's a little trick that can bring you back from the anxious surge outward in a palm-to-face instant. It helped me get all that be in the present stuff that my anxiety had previously stopped me from even being able to conceptualize, let alone feel. Tolle writes, ask yourself what problem you have right now. Not the next year, tomorrow, or 5 minutes from now. What is wrong with this moment? Your head might jump 15 minutes ahead. No. Now. Is the problem still there? Chances are, it's gone. As Tolle tells it, worries don't exist in the now. Worries about the future or the past don't exist either. They're just narratives we create in the present. Practice asking yourself, what's the problem? Often. See if you don't start to feel the anxious cycle back away. See if those startled birds at sunset don't begin to settle gently, softly at dusk. See if this gentleness is where you want to be. Here ends our meditation.
High shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the veils of the morning to where the crickets sing. There the nights all a-glimmer, and noon a purple glow. And evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day. I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray. I hear it in the deep heart's core. The deep heart's
An ordinary morning. My partner Michael and I are bedhead virtuosos. As if made by aberrant birds, our morning coiffes couldn't be more different. His nest is made of ethereal white gossamer and seems to have been weaved by orioles, while mine, made of substantial coarse strands, weighs on my head like an eagle's nest. Unlike Michael, who immediately slides his hand over his hair no matter how much I beg him not to touch it before he looks in the mirror, I love to see what the night wrought atop my head. I go directly to the full-length mirror and crack up like a 9-year-old girl at the sight of myself. And if the structure on my head is particularly glorious, I leave it in place for a while. In the kitchen, our cat Cato makes funny, excited quacking sounds as we prepare breakfast. Cato gets his first. Then I turn on the coffee maker as Michael puts croissants in the toaster oven and begins putting berries into bowls. By the time I'm done setting the table, Cato will have wolfed down his food, and we open the curtains in the front window to watch the birds and the people go about their morning business as we wait for Michael. Cato doesn't care about most birds, but when he sees a raven, he says, "Oh." So now I know how to say one word in cat. Oh, raven. Finally, the time comes to sit at the table. Sometimes Cato asks for a taste of croissant, and we call him Quai de Pierre. And sometimes, as we quietly savor our coffee, Michael's dimples make a rare appearance as he looks at me across the table, and I melt faster than the butter on my croissant. And for the life of me, I become a satin bowerbird, transfixed by all things blue, berries, Michael's eyes, and ordinary, gloriously ordinary morning skies.
We make offerings to this community in so many ways. But for this offering to the life and works of this community, for our works and ministries here and in the world, our offering will now be both given and gratefully received.
Ein blauer Sommer, Glanz und Blütenschwer, geht über Wiesen, Felder, Gärten her. Die Sonnenkronen glüht auf seinen Locken, sein warmer Atem läutet Blütenglocken. Ein gottliches Bad und seht die Sterne. Schwer aus den Zweigen fällt die reife Frucht, und Sens und Stiche liegt auf Flur und Feld. Und Rot von Rosen, Rot von Rosen ist die ganze Welt. Rot von Rosen.
The reading today is a poem, Morning in a New Land, by Mary Oliver. In trees, still dripping night, some nameless birds woke, shook out their arrowy wings, and sang slowly, like finches sifting through a dream. The pink sun fell like glass into the fields. 2 chestnuts and a dapple gray, their shoulders wet with light, their dark hair streaming, climbed the hill. The last mist fell away. And under the trees, beyond time's brittle drift, I stood like Adam in his lonely garden on that first morning, shaken out of sleep, rubbing his eyes, listening, parting the leaves like tissue on some vast, incredible gift.
Waterbird, waterbird,
You know, we have these side doors open for air circulation, and one of the strange findings and delights is that you can sometimes hear the birds outside get excited and enter into conversation with our singers. Yeah, that's right. They even come in sometimes. Every morning, or many mornings at least, I write in a journal, and I have for decades. I do so in part to keep track of my life. I tell myself that someday, in a rocking chair on a porch somewhere, I will read through them all, just like I will look through those thousands of pictures that I keep having to spend more money to store digitally, and all the half-finished scrapbooks during that period of a hobby that I had around those. Writing in my journal is also a piece of my spiritual practice. It's this time that is carved out, this space at the table to reflect on the day before. And sometimes I learn something while I'm doing it. A month ago, looking back on what I remembered as a perfect day the day before, I realized how perfect it was and how completely, utterly, unimpressively ordinary, too. Which prompted me to think about this idea of the ordinary and our relationship to it. Sarah Wilson, in her book, First We Make the Beast Beautiful, writes about how often she has danced with the habit of looking for happiness outside of herself, as so many of us do dance at times with. And also how this focus outward seems to come hand in hand with a kind of infinite escalation of what it will take for the outside world to make us feel happy. Tied to that, I think, is our relationship to the ordinary. When you and I say ordinary, it's often not a compliment. It's something we devalue when we call it that. The ordinary is the commonplace. It's the everyday, and it's also implied, I think, in our use that it's also boring, it's the mediocre. It's something that is held up against the special, the extraordinary, extraordinary. We never say, for instance, last night I went out and went to my favorite restaurant for an ordinary meal there. Or, we cooked ordinary homemade chocolate chip cookies last night. To be worthy of naming, it has to be special, and the implication is that we always would prefer the special, if we can find it, if we can afford it, if we can create it. I mean, who willingly settles? It can show up in our relationship to stuff. The extra soft sheets from Egyptian cotton of this count or that, I've lost count, actually. The hand-poured over coffee instead of brewed, you name it. If it can be packaged for sale, it has been, and it will be in the quest for the special and the novel. But I don't actually want to go down the path of this being a sermon about how consumerism and capitalism fuel this escalation and all the evils of it, the false promises embedded in both systems, the negative externalities and human, environmental costs of all of this. Though all of that is worth talking about, it's a ship we desperately need to turn around to save our lives in the quest for soulful living, for sustainable life together. But I want to fight to define some boundary that makes this sermon about more than just that. I mean, this escalation I'm talking about, it can show up in our relationship to experiences. Extreme sports sometimes strike me as this same escalation and diminishment of the ordinary. Like, skiing isn't enough. all the beauty of going down a slope, the wind blowing in your hair, the mountains. Instead, you have to try backcountry skiing, right? No lifts, no trails, the risk of avalanche or injury, and the scarcity of that experience for those who have done it. Anything we do, it seems, that can be ordinary, we humans somehow find a way to escalate. And a piece of this can be the human drive for challenge, which I respect. And a piece of this is probably tied to our thirst for novelty, which I think is hardwired in us. But there is a piece in the shadows that is about a sense that what is ordinary isn't valued or worth as much in some calculus, unarticulated, of a life that is worth living. A special life has to be filled, it seems, with special things, and those aren't everyday common things. But is that true, that last statement? A special life, which is to say a good life, one we enjoy and find fulfilling, one that is delicious, has to be filled with special things, things that aren't commonplace? Are ordinary things less delightful, for instance? Well, let's think. I'm a huge fan of apples. I have at least one a day, so let's take the apple. Any ripe apple. Any apple that tastes like an apple. Juicy, sweet, or tart with the flavor profile of that kind of apple. Some apple right in the middle of the profile. That is to say, some ordinary Granny Smith apple, for instance. Isn't that apple lovely? Is it less delicious or gorgeous by being commonplace? Or take the nap. Any nap, say, that lasts between 20 minutes and an hour. Any nap that takes place where it's quiet or noisy, warm or cold enough for you to be able to stay asleep. That is to say, an ordinary nap. Isn't it delicious? One of life's most pleasant gifts. Even and especially if you have one, if you manage to have one every day. Would it ever be less so for being less common? Or a day. Any day, all days that begin like days do, like the one in Mary Oliver's poem, the day that begins with trees dripping somewhere with dew and sunlight pink and falling like glass on the wetness of everything, a world beginning to wake and shake itself free from sleep. Isn't that day, that ordinary day that breaks the way days always do, predictably, normally, isn't that something we part the curtains or the leaves to like tissue on some vast, incredible gift? Is it any less so after 30 of those days in a row or 54 years of them? Is Mari's morning with Michael and Cato Pierre, with bedhead and berries and coffee and dimples when they show up and a blue sky, any less special because it happens, predictably, I'm imagining, every day, as common as mud, as the poet Marge Piercy would say? Someone once told me, someone who works in hospice and has all those conversations that many of us are afraid to have or feel ill-equipped to have with those who stand on the precipice of dying. They said that in those conversations, what people most often speak of most fondly and wish they could have more of, yes, It isn't the hours in the office. We all know that. But it isn't often the time they parachuted from an airplane or a wish to relive one more day at Disneyland. No, what they pine for is the ordinary days, apparently, most people. What they love and loved and want more of is apparently the ordinary. It's another dinner with loved ones at the table, another of those Saturday morning runs through the neighborhood while the world slept, one more day to put your kids or grandkids to bed with a bath and a story. In Thornton Wilder's play, Our Town, Wilder walks us through life in an ordinary place, if you remember the play, in Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, which, unlike Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon, where everyone is above ordinary, is instead a place Wilder makes explicit and clear where everyone is ordinary. In fact, he opens by telling us that he can't point to anyone of note who's ever come out of this place. And then he invites us to step into their daily lives, ordinary as they are. And in the last scene of the play, it's forwarded some years we are to when one of the characters, young Emily, now married, dies in childbirth and joins the world of the dead. And there she talks with her former neighbor and others who have passed away before her, and she finds out that she actually has the option to go back and live beside the living, if she chooses to, though her elders discourage it. She can go back to her life any moment, past or present. At first, Emily wants to choose a special day, maybe the day when she and her future spouse realized they were in love, some extraordinary day in this life just ended. But at the advice of her mother-in-law, Mrs. Gibbs, she hears that in fact she should choose an unimportant day. Gibbs says, choose the least important day in your life. It will be important enough. And it is. Emily goes back to an ordinary day, one she couldn't even remember before it started to replay. And she's struck by the poignancy of everything she sees, all the people she loves alive and so unaware of what they have in the moment. Something only, it sees, the dead can reliably see. Just for a moment now, we're all together, Mama, she says to a mother who cannot hear her across the veil. Just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another. And Emily is struck by what she missed. I didn't realize Mama's sunflowers and food and coffee and new ironed dresses and hot baths and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anybody to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it every minute? A friend sent me a photo of her child, now a young adult, walking. It was a picture from behind of him and his current love interest. A summer's day, they were all out to go on some errand or outing. No one was particularly dressed up. You could see the two walking together, their fingers interconnected, just a couple of them, relaxed, giving off that feeling of two people who are at ease with each other, talking about nothing in particular. There are moments as good as these in life, I texted back to her immediately. But none better. How do we see what's right in front of us with Emily's eyes? With what we too know in certain moments with keen clarity? how to live in praise of the ordinary. Not tempted to discount it or devalue it, but to see it and know it for what it is. Perhaps if we do, we will become like the poets do, seeing and singing the praise of the sacred ordinariness of it all. Of Marge Piercy in her poem Welcome Morning, who writes how, quote, she means but often forgets to fall down by the kitchen table in a prayer of rejoicing. Or Lucille Clifton in her poem Cutting Greens, who writes of this intimate moment in the kitchen, I hold their bodies in obscene embrace, thinking of everything but kinship. Collards and kale strain against each other away from my kiss-making hand and the iron bed pot. The pot is black, the cutting board is black, my hand, and just for a minute, the greens roll black under the knife and the kitchen twists dark on its spine, and I taste in my natural appetite the bond of live things everywhere. The ordinary, and this invitation to live in praise of it. I realized in writing the sermon that I was tempted periodically in poetic preacher excess to say something about the extraordinary ordinary, except that this would belie the point. Because what I want to leave us with this morning, to name and to recall to us from our own places of knowing, is the grounding and the delight of the simply ordinary in our days. Simply that. Remarkably that. Because recently I had a thoroughly ordinary day, and I realized in writing in my journal the next morning that if I had to live again a day, just one, I might choose that one. It had everything that makes me happy, which it turns out is as common as mud. I love you all. Bless us all in our days and the deep, poignant living of them. Amen. In the spirit of the service, too, I invite us to rise, embody our spirit, and sing our closing hymn, which is number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth.
For the beauty of the
invite us to remain standing. You can put down your hymnals. And now, in our comings and our goings, may the light of love shine upon us. Out from within us, be gracious unto us, and grant us peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Amen.